Hello and welcome to NDTV. Today we experience the consequences of climate change and global warming. To combat the same, many such steps are being taken, and one such initiative has been started in Pune's Pimpri Chinchwad area, where Adore Power Turn has initiated a facility named hydrogen facility. And to inaugurate the same, we have Australian High Commissioner to the Indian Consulate, Mr. Green Philip, with us. Let's take an in-depth interview of the same. Sir, we welcome you on NDTV. My very first question to you is, Australia is known for its, expertise in renewable energy technologies. This initiative, how do you look at this initiative to combat the decarbonization globally?
Well, this is at the centre of our partnership with India. Just last November, our two Prime Ministers met for their annual summit, and amongst a wide range of new initiatives that they agreed, the cornerstone was a new renewable energy partnership. And that will help us work together on a wide range of fields, whether that's critical minerals or hydrogen, but at the core of it was a new effort by Australia to support Prime Minister Modi's objective for 10 million solar rooftops. Now, why can Australia help with that? Because Australia is the country of all countries in the world with the largest deployment per capita of solar rooftops. And putting a solar PV panel on the top of a roof is not so complicated. What is very complicated is making sure that that can then feed back into the grid, and the householder can not only create energy, but can also sell energy back into the grid. That's the capability that many Australian businesses and operations have developed. That's the capability that we want to share with the Indian government and with Indian business.
What does hydrogen facility, especially the green hydrogen, play in India's and Australia's long-term climate and energy transition goals?
Well, as we know, perhaps the core of the energy transition in most countries is to decarbonise the grid so that our electricity comes from renewable sources. And that gets you a long way in order to decarbonisation. But there are some things you cannot do with grid electricity. There's some things you can't do with electrons. For some forms of power, the high intensity power, you need molecules. You need molecules, for instance, to drive trucks or trains. Now, hydrogen is the best option that we have for a green alternative to fossil molecules, to carbon features like gas and coal. But bringing down the cost of hydrogen, so it is comparable with the cost of natural gas, is a huge global objective. So here today, we've seen the initiation of a new facility which will help build electrolyzers. Electrolyzers are the machines that split water into the two components of hydrogen and oxygen and hold the hydrogen so that it can be then used for energy. So it's great for me to be here at Adore and to help them inaugurate this brand new facility which will be producing a key element of the hydrogen supply chain.
Sir, we would like to know your insight on how will this facility help India to, complete its climate goals in respect to the Paris Agreement.
But it's not just about India, isn't it? I mean, if we are, as a family of nations, to get off such heavy reliance on fossil fuels, we will all need to find new ways to generate and utilize renewable energy. And hydrogen is a crucial element of that because of its intensivity and because of the capacity to store. Now, there are other companies elsewhere in the world which are producing electrolyzers. But India, with its massive manufacturing capability and relatively low-cost manufacturing, and the fact that it is proximate to Australia is particularly important for us. That's why we want India to be successful in its effort to produce electric vehicles. We want India to be successful in producing photovoltaics. And we want India to be successful in producing electrolyzers. So a facility like this today is crucial for us as we drive for more, better, cheaper, more efficient producers of hydrogen. And I'm very confident this Ador facility will become a major player in that in India.
Could you please more elaborate on the technological collaboration with regard to this electrolyzer facility between India and Australia?
So Australia and India have a green hydrogen task force. It is currently in the final phases of its work, and we expect it to release its report early this year. What are we trying to do in that? We are trying to bring together Australian and Indian expertise so that we have the best thoughts that Australian engineers, scientists and entrepreneurs have, and India the same, and also to look for ways in which the supply chain between Australia and India could work. Now, that's important because we all need for the world to become less reliant on fossil fuels, and hydrogen will be a key element in us doing that. And the best science and the best engineering to produce the most efficient and most effective and cheapest electrolyzers is going to be crucial. That's the sort of insight that is fed into the work that has gone on here today at Ador.
If a facility is brought, it's been inaugurated here, it brings jobs and infrastructure development here as well. So how do you look at the economic and infrastructure development here in India with respective to these projects?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, India has many economic strengths. Very fast growth. It's now the 5th biggest economy in the world, will be the 3rd biggest by 2030.
I would like to interrupt you here. Do you believe that this will be the economic growth of India?
I do.
Okay.
I'm very confident. We're very confident that India will be the 3rd biggest economy in the world by 2030. But one thing that Indians tell me is not so great is the level of new employment for Indians.
Yeah.
And partly that's about skilling so that people are ready here for the jobs in the future. But partly it's about having industries, and here manufacturing is crucial. Manufacturing is the industry that soaks up the largest number of potential employees. So just as you said, a new facility like this, which produces not just jobs, but good jobs, jobs of the future, smart jobs. And I've seen the quality of the staff here.
Yeah.
It's really quite exceptional. And by the way, quite a lot of women engineers, quite a lot of women scientists in this. That's good to see. This sort of facility is the sort of thing that India needs a lot more of in order to soak up that large pool of young people who are coming onto the job market. And can I say one other thing about that, which is important? When it comes to training, this is something that we're very focused on in Australia. As we know, more than 100,000 Indians are in Australia for tertiary training at any one time, and that will go on, and that's very good. But we think that we can play a bigger role in skilling young Indians up for the jobs of the future. And that will require training to happen here in India. And that's why the first 2 foreign universities of any in the world that have set up in India are Australian. And just this week, we announced a 3rd Australian university, which is opening a university. That one will be in UP. So we want to be part of India's success story. We believe in India's growth. We also believe that Indian young people can have a better opportunity of a good job, and India's economy will grow faster if there's higher level training. And we can play a part in that, and we're keen to do so.
Considering with the continuing on the same questions, how do you look Australian businesses or Australian companies in India's green space, green energy space?
Well, it's huge. It's growing. It's growing very fast, and that's a big testament to the commitment of the Modi government to green energy. I guess there's a number of ways which we fit in. We've talked a bit about technology transfer and about how Australia has some innovations that we are happy to share. The second thing I'd say is that a young Australian startup in the field of green energy, we're not such a big economy, we're only 26 million people. Traditionally, to grow fast, they will need to internationalise and to scale. And typically that's not available in Australia. And typically young tech firms in Australia have put a foot into Silicon Valley or Singapore or Germany or whatever. What I'm saying to Australian young tech entrepreneurs, including those in the green energy field, come and have a look at India, because this is a place where there's high quality manufacturing, there's definitely scale, and there are global connections. So this is an option for Australian tech firms. One final thing I'd say is very important here. India has an ambition to be a huge producer of batteries and electric vehicles, and we in Australia want that to happen too. But the fundamental building block for those electric vehicles is lithium. Australia produces more than 50% of the world's lithium. But at the moment, there is very little trade between Australia and India and lithium. It all goes to another country or countries to be reprocessed. What I'm working on is to have Indian firms directly connected to lithium mines in Australia, whether that be by way of ownership or be by way of offtake. That's number one. And number two, for Australia and India to be working on that lithium supply chain. And let's not forget, you get the lithium out of the ground, you've got to turn it into lithium hydroxide, then to cathode active material, and then to batteries, and then to cells, and then to batteries. There's a long way in that supply chain, and we need to do a lot more between Australia and India to connect us.
So my next question is the most talked region in Global South, the Indo-Pacific region. How does the hydrogen electrolyzer facility mean for the future of energy security in Indo-Pacific region?
Well, Australia's economic and strategic future lies in this region. And for a very long time, much of Australia's effort has been to provide the energy, the resources and the skills to countries in our region. And over the longest period, that's been with countries like Japan, that's been with China, that's been with Korea, that's been with countries like Singapore. In this decade, we have decided that we want India to be part of that family of countries with which we are closely engaged in major industry. And that's why my government has spent 280 million Australian dollars, that's over 1,000 crore rupees, on an upgrade of our bilateral economic links. That means that we can have more delegations, we can have more support for industry. It means that we can have more diplomats, including trade diplomats, who can support it. So for us, India represents a major opportunity and a huge amount of effort, frankly, by my government and by my team all across India. We now have 4 consulates here, including a new one in Bangalore. That is our effort to harness as much of the huge opportunity that exists between Australia and India in the economic sphere.
So I would like to ask you that there are some challenges in the hydrogen production and infrastructure development in India. As we know that the private players are coming in and they play an important role. So how the both governments with the private players, how does these challenges can come up?
Well, that's a really good question that you posed there. We think that the future for a green fuel of a molecular sort will be in hydrogen. We're confident about that. We're backing that ourselves in Australia. But at the moment, the cost of producing hydrogen is higher than the cost of natural gas or other alternatives. To some extent, the way in which you bring costs down is by scale.
Right.
To some extent, the way in which you bring costs down is by scientific advancement, and that's why the joint study that Australia and India are embarked upon is so important. To some extent, what you need to do as government is to support the hydrogen industry, like we are doing in Australia, the establishment of 7 hydrogen hubs around the country, and with a hydrogen head start policy that we have, India is doing much the same here. So you're right that we have a way to go before we find a hydrogen industry that can operate in strong competition to its alternatives. A lot of that journey has to be undertaken by businesses, and gosh, we've seen Ador take a big step today. But some of the work also needs to be done
But
by governments.
as I mentioned, private players will play an important role in these.
Crucial. I mean, Australia is a liberal economy. We believe that we believe in free enterprise, and we believe that with the right incentives and the right vision, that the private sector will have to be at the centre of the hydrogen industry, as it has been in all of the previous industries in Australia. But we also think it needs a level of government support and direction, and that's what we're doing, and that's what the Modi government's doing as well.
Do you think there are any policy or regulatory hurdles in India that needs to be addressed for the growth of hydrogen economy?
Well, look, that's much more a question for Indian firms and for the Indian government to work out. I mean, I've been impressed by the way in which your government has introduced mechanisms to support horizon industries, the PLI schemes as they apply to PV and EV industries are very impressive. So, I think the Indian government is best placed to identify what further support for industry there should be, and let's face it, that's got to be carefully done.
Just a question in between that. What are your expectations, for the future of hydrogen energy in India?
I think this country has the resources and capability to produce a substantial quantity of hydrogen. I imagine that a large amount of that will be deployed domestically, but I know that India has an ambition, like Australia does, to be an exporter of hydrogen. But today we're here at the Ador facility, and that reminds us that India won't just be a producer of hydrogen, it'll also be a producer of the plant and equipment that will produce hydrogen. And so today we've seen a hydrogen electrolyzer designed and built here in India, which can go up against many of the rest of the world. So I think India has a big role to play in the hydrogen future, and that's why there's a reason why Australia has embarked with India on a hydrogen joint study. It's because we think that there are complementary skills that we've got and real opportunity in India.
What do you think that this hydrogen electrolyzer facility will play in rising awareness between the the public awareness in both the countries?
Well, I think that's important, isn't it? Because people have to believe in a future where hydrogen is going to be a substantial part of the energy mix. And a facility like we've seen here today gives us confidence that in a city like Pune, with the leadership of a person like Ravan Merchandani and with the foresight of him and his team in Ador, he can be producing key components for hydrogen electrolyzers. That helps give us confidence, the Indian public, perhaps also the Australian public, confidence that there will be a hydrogen future and that it will be able to be produced efficiently and at cost that can compete with other fuel sources.
My last question to you is, how can the public-private partnerships be leveraged to bring such more projects in terms of Indian-Australian relations?
Well, there's lots of ways. As I said, in Australia, we have established these hydrogen hubs, which are providing shared infrastructure for Australian firms to be able to build hydrogen plants around. As I've said, Australia and India are working on the underlying science of the hydrogen supply chain and sharing our best knowledge and expertise. And as I've said, your country too is finding ways in which government can provide some support to industry in an industry that is currently not competitive with its counterparts. So government business engagement is important, but at the end of the day, you know, in my country, these industries will have to be able to be self-reliant, and they will have to be able to produce enough wealth that delivers back to shareholders and to investors. We're not there yet. A level of government support will be required to get there, but we're confident that the green economy that we will seek in future decades will be a green economy in which hydrogen will play a significant role.
So, Mr. Philip, will be it right to end on the note that India and Australia ties have a long way to go, and there will be definitely more projects on its way?
That is certainly true. I mean, we see huge upside potential in the bilateral relationship. Frankly, my challenge is to harness as much of the opportunity that exists. There's only 24 hours in a day, but we're working at full steam to try to do that. And by the way, at the same time, Ravati, we also enjoy a game of cricket from time to time.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
remind ourselves that we share ways in which we can cooperate, and occasionally there are wins and losses. It's a great relationship across a wide variety of cultural, sporting, as well as business opportunities.
Definitely, this was Mr. Philip Green, and as he rightly mentioned, that there's a long way for Indian and Australian ties, though in diplomatic way and of course in cricket as well. With camera person Nikitan Mane, Revati Hingwe, NDTV, Pune.